Hey everyone, and welcome to The Advisor. I am Lisa Urbanski. Stacey Chillemi is here, and we have a special guest today. He is a man of resilience, and we really want to highlight that today. His name is Rikki Lee Travolta. Before we get started, I just want to thank our sponsors, Spreaker and iHeartRadio. Without you, this conversation would not be possible. And to our listeners, please remember to like and subscribe, leave comments. You're going to want to ask a million questions and we want to answer them for you. So after you hear this, please do not hesitate. We will be there for you. Hi, Stacey and Rikki Lee. We are so honored to introduce you to our audience. How are things going?
Well, I'm the one who's really honored. Lisa and Stacey, you're amazing talents. You're amazing people. We did a little pre-talking before we came on, and I got to know you. And wow, you two have the most amazing stories. And so to have the opportunity to focus on me, I feel honored. And I really feel honored to connect to the audience. Um, because no matter what country you're in, no matter what you believe, religion, politics, it's all just people. And
Yes.
these are people who listen to these great stories. That, Stacey's own story, and then the people that you, Lisa and Stacey, bring on. Amazing stories, amazing people that all come from the audience. I represent rock stars. I'm a celebrity publicist. And so Stephen Adler, Grammy Hall of Fame rock star, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame rock star, one of Rolling Stone magazine's 100 greatest drummers of all time. He created the Adler swing style that defined the sound of Guns N' Roses on Appetite for Destruction and subsequent hits. Well, people love coming to Stephen Adler shows, not just because it's great music, but because of what he gives to the audience. You see
Mhm.
the smile on his face, and he doesn't big time people. He doesn't walk by and say, "Oh, I'm not going to give an autograph." He'll spend time. That smile not only permeates from the stage, it's in how he treats people. And that's what it's all about. Image and branding. Not only am I a celebrity publicist, I made a lot of companies, a lot of money, very famous, number one brands in a number of industries. A great example of that is Empire Today. It was a Chicago based flooring company that was big in Chicago because they did a lot of advertising. And then David Lenowitz, a billionaire venture capitalist, bought the company and tried to take it national. And it wasn't translated. The spokesperson they had in Chicago wasn't translating nationally because he became famous in Chicago because they were used to him from decades of seeing him on TV. And I just introduced the Axiotron model, what is now known as the iPad before the iPad. And it's the only product in the history of Macworld, very big Apple tech thing. Only product in the history of that world event that Apple didn't win. I'm the only guy who introduced a product outside of Apple to win Best of Show and all those awards. I didn't invent it. Andres Haas, brilliant inventor, did. But I did the one of a kind marketing that made it happen. And Steve Jobs, wow, God bless his soul. He called me. He called me personally and he told me, "Rikki, you're a marketing genius." And
Mhm.
I work with rock stars. I work with Hollywood stars, Broadway, sports figures. Steve Jobs, that's a unique one. And that was my wow. Um, because I'll hang out with Steven Adler. And to to a general fan, that's probably the wow thing. But you have to realize celebrities are real people. They're real people.
Mhm.
Um, but Steve Jobs, that was my wow. And here's the big thing about that wow. I am high functioning autistic. And when I was a child, not much was known about autism. I was born in 1970. And they were thinking about institutionalizing. That's how I'm going to use the word severe. And I don't want to get focused on the word severe because it's a very negative one. And I'm considered a success story, autistic success story. But as a child, severe autism to the point they didn't know what was going on. I'd have these screaming and yelling and and couldn't blend into society. Well, not only was I autistic, my father was raping me. My father's a convicted sex offender under many names across the country. In Lincoln, Nebraska, he is convicted and on parole under the name Lawrence Ernesti Jr. He actually pays his brother, Dennis Beasy, to be in the house for the police to come and take pictures because they have to do the check because he's not allowed to leave Nebraska. Mm. And Dennis Beasy isn't even his real name. He was born Warren Beasy, just like my father, Dr. Gerald Michael Beasy, made up name. He was born Roland Beasy. Then my grandfather, my father was Roland Beasy Jr. My grandfather, Roland Beasy, faked his own death in 1958, married his own widow, became Lawrence Ernesti, lived off the grid. Then his brother, Al Beasy, died in the war. Al Beasy's wife dies in a car accident. My grandfather, Roland, comes back, takes over Al's life. And wow. So Daddy has all these identities. And one of them is Dr. Gerald Michael Beasy. And so he's living in Lake Oswego, Oregon, with $100 million in a company called GMB Investors. Mm-hmm. Rikki Lee Travolta is not the name. Well, it's one of my names because he created all these names for me, too. Wow. The one on my birth certificate by Gerald of his names is Gregory Michael Beasy, GMB Investors. Gerald Michael Beasy doesn't exist. Who do you think all that money is under? GMB. If your son is Gregory Michael Beasy and you're Gerald Michael Beasy, you go to the bank, G. Michael Beasy. All of a sudden, controlling everything. But child, autism, and he's labeling me crazy rather than autistic. Not only that, nobody knew what autism was. And so right. I was going to be a failure. My relatives, even the ones who loved me, saw me as a failure. They termed me not as an insult, but diagnostically, my relatives, English majors, they termed me retarded. Wow. And they didn't mean it as an insult. They honestly thought I was, or defective. But I learned how to blend in, how to mask. It was by accident. I got cast.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you got to bring us back to childhood, bring us back to that moment that you were talking to Stacey and I about when you were playing in that playroom. What happened and how did that change your life? I mean, we're talking today about resilience and we really want to highlight that and highlight you. So bring us back to that time when you're 4 years old and you're playing with those toys. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, here I was. I can't really function. I'm having these screaming outbursts and everything. I can't be left alone. And so my mother really wanted my sister, Jordana Beasy Foster. She is just brilliant. And my mother wanted her to be an actress. So we would go to take Jordana, to acting class. I couldn't be left alone. So I'd play in the lobby. Mm-hmm. And so I think I was in grade school. It was beyond 4. That's when Daddy started doing these bad things. But I was in grade school and I'm playing in the lobby and A Christmas Carol. Tiny Tim is this big name part. But you know what? You only have to say 2 lines. God blesses everyone. Another one. And so all you have to really do is be cute. Paul DeRumis, the director of the theater, sees me playing in the lobby. And I don't know what an audition is. I don't know what a play is. I don't know anything. And he casts me as Tiny Tim. And I'm awful. I'm just terrible. I can't even, I don't have friends. I don't know how to talk to people right. I don't have expressions. But I was cute. And it gets taped for television. And I was still awful, but I was cute. And so I start working as a steady actor. Awful, but working. And we all know there's a lot of actors in Hollywood who are awful, but they work a lot. And that's great. They have careers. Part of autism, at least in my case, lots of different types of autism, variations. In my case, I learned like a sponge. And so I was around these great actors and I wanted to learn to act. I wanted to blend in. So I would go home and I would practice facial expressions and intonations and things in the mirror. And I didn't know how to smile properly. I didn't know what anger looked like. And by learning it to act, I learned how to blend into society. Even my sneeze, I heard an actor named David Beetham Gomes. It was actually in that show right there. Sister Mary Ignatius explains it all. I did
Yeah.
that for a few years as a young man, and I think I was 12. And David Beetham Gomes was in the cast, and he sneezed. I thought, wow, that is a macho sneeze. Because here I'm this undersized kid. I'm being sexually molested at home. I really want to be macho. And
Yeah.
that's a macho sneeze. So to this day, I sneeze like David Beetham Gomes. And so learning to act allowed me to blend into society. Still, I'm being discriminated against. I'm still seen as the retarded kid. And I want to point out something that, um, you know, I think that's meant as an insult when people do call me that. But they're not the ones who know me. They're not the ones who interact with me. Steve Jobs called me a marketing genius. And I if I am deemed retarded in people's minds, then maybe everyone should want to be retarded because I created a genre of music. If you Google
Right.
me, I'm the godfather of sludge metal, a $1 billion music genre that I created on accident. I didn't invent the music. I didn't invent the term either. It was a new kind of music that Mark Noir had produced the album, amazing producer. Nobody had heard of this. It was a band called Crowbar. So I sat down with them and I said, let's talk, because that's how I learned. And we talked, and they mentioned in passing in the clubs it was called sludge metal. So I said, hey, I can market that. I was the
Yeah.
first record industry executive to use the term in marketing. Now, years later, it's $1 billion genre of music, and I get the honorary title of Godfather of Sludge Metal. Now,
Right.
if a retarded person is the guy who created that, if a retarded person has written best-selling books, if a retarded person is a best-selling author, if a retarded person took Empire Today from $40 million a year to $700 million a year, if a retarded person introduced the only product in the history of Macworld to that year, Steve Jobs was talking about the iPhone, and what I introduced won the best of show. Maybe we don't need to be focused on the negativity of labels. Instead of special needs, let's focus on special. And
Yeah.
that is kind of the key. One of the keys to my success is putting the focus on the right things, whether
Yeah.
that be a company's corporate image, having made #1 brands in multiple industries, or celebrity clientele, reviving careers, turning celebrities into celebrity brands. And
Right.
all that time, my focus is on the people. On being good for our communities, good for our economy. We need money to run this country or any country, the world. But it's not about money, because money's an invention.
Yeah.
Companies are an invention. And
Right.
everybody's entitled to believe what they want to believe. I happen to be spiritual. I believe in God. And I don't believe that God invented buildings. God didn't invent companies. God didn't
Yeah.
invent money. Stacey, Lisa, God, in my view, invented people. And that's what we need. That's what we need to focus on and helping each other. Because I've done all these great things, made these companies billions and made celebrities stars. But I can't do it alone because I'm disabled. I can make $100 million marketing plan while making breakfast. But the other end of autism is, in my case, something called executive function disorder. And I'm going to use a prop, cell phone. I'm like a 3-year-old with a cell phone. Honestly, my son Valentino, he's now a brilliant comic book producer. He writes comics. He and his partner and lovely girlfriend Jay, they own a comic publishing company, and he writes the comics. She does the art. But he was a little kid, and he was the one teaching me how to use my phone because
Wow.
it is a disability. I will never be able to use a phone without assistance. And I
Right.
applied that to business. So any successes I've had, taking Empire Today to the #1 position in flooring in less than a year, what would have taken anybody non-autistic 10 to 20
Right.
years. For me to do that, teamwork. Teamwork is everything. I wasn't the only guy at Empire. I wasn't the only guy at Other World Computing. I wasn't when Ben Roth and I used to meet at Disneyland and talk about the staffing industry. Well, that wasn't a one-person company. Now that's the #1 staffing company in the U.S. I've had a part in a lot of successes, but it's all teamwork. And I'm going to point out the very basis of that. You can't make a baby without teamwork.
Yes.
We have to have teamwork.
Be
People, people.
difficult.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that term that we coined earlier, wonderfully weird. We were talking about wonderfully weird. And in my view, if I may, the people that I respect the most in the world and I look up to the most are those people that show up on unapologetically themselves. And they don't apologize for who they are, and they just do what they do best. And you're really illustrating that and what resilience. So it's pretty amazing.
Well, thank you. And I do want to keep hitting that word resilience because we all face struggles in life. I survived a father raping me. My staff and I, we just escaped an Airbnb. It was the most ludicrous thing. We were held captive at an Airbnb because the host, Nathan Brown of Westward 360, we talked and he heard the word disabled. And so I work with celebrities. We work in entertainment, produce films, television, literature, music. And he didn't want to put a lock on one of the doors. And he promised, oh, Westward 360, Nathan Brown at Airbnb will pay for anything that's stolen. Well, of course, things were stolen. Police report was filed with Officer Megan Blue, now Detective Megan Blue at the Fox Lake Police Department. And when Nathan Brown found out how much he was on the hook for, he heard the word disabled and he thought, oh, these guys are just stupid in there. It's going to be $10. He finds out it's worth, millions. Rather than do the honorable thing, rather than just do the business thing and submit it to insurance, he goes, I'm going to be polite and call it cuckoo crazy. And he notifies my relatives and he notifies the police that there's this bunch of crazies, these disabled people in this building, and they never researched it. My relatives never got on the phone with me, and the police just believed it. And so we were held there 4 months, starved, abused, tortured. And I was able to eventually get my staff out. And I was the last one being held there. And I'm a big, strong, macho, heterosexual guy. And I was raped. I was held down and I was physically raped. And it's not a sex crime because I don't think that he's homosexual. And if he is, then I have no fault with many of my best friends are homosexual. But I don't think there was any interest in that. It's a power crime, and he'd gotten away with everything. He had destroyed my credit. He had destroyed our lives. He destroyed our reputations. Went online with the assistance of my relatives who still saw me back in 1970 as the retarded kid or the disabled kid or the autistic kid or whatever term you want to use. That allowed that to happen. And yet, resilience. I'm still here. I still find a reason to smile. I actually can't even talk to my kids right now because my relatives were so convinced by this man they've never met who just got on the phone with them, told them a lie. The police just told them a lie. He told the police a lie. He told my relatives a lie. They spread all this information to my kids' moms.
Mm.
Wow. Wow. And so what do? Image and branding. I know it'll get fixed, but there's a timetable for everything. And if
Yeah.
you can't get on the phone with your own son's mother because they were lied to by people who probably feel they're doing the right thing in their heart,
Hmm.
but they thought so bad of me, or I don't want to use the word bad. They saw such pity for him as the stupid kid. And I have the texts from when I was begging them to rescue me from this torture. Me and my staff, I'm begging them. I'm saying there's millions at stake here. Our lives are at stake. And they wouldn't get on the phone. And they would send texts that said they called me a stupid idiot, an effing idiot. And I understand. They think that that's love, but that's not. And even if I was the crazy, if Nathan Brown was telling the truth, which obviously he wasn't, then is that how you treat somebody?
Right.
Not how I do. I believe in love. I believe in helping people. And so in those bad times, I finally escaped. I'm on the streets eating out of garbage cans. I called myself the richest homeless person in the world because I'm owed millions from my former business partners.
Right.
Uh, and I probably own the city of Fox Lake now in terms of the way we documented it, going up to, we were there to shoot podcasts. We were relaunching Life and Times, which was one of the biggest theater and entertainment news sites in Chicago. It was very successful. We were going to launch it nationally. Taking a step back to do that. That's part of why we were there. We were working on
Right.
Stephen Adler projects, things that in association with our rhythm guitarist, Alistair James, one of the top engineers and producers in the country. He produces Hollywood Vampires and Quiet Ride and things. Ari Kamen, our lead singer. Well, he had just done a song, It's Showtime, because I'd done a radio show called It's Showtime. So he wrote this song in its regard. And we're working on an album and everything for that. All these projects, film, television, movie, we're working on those. Like I said, millions of dollars of products stolen. One of the things we were doing there was launching a podcast network.
Mhm.
And so we were filming. And so we couldn't stop the abuse, but we filmed out hundreds of hours of this. And maybe we'll work with a documentary filmmaker and make it a documentary. Maybe we'll release it as a limited series. That'll be determined. What's very probable, it's going to be evidence, hundreds of hours of evidence in court, because Sergeant Lira of the Fox Lake Police bragged, knowing he was being recorded, because he thought we were stupid and disabled, whatever Nathan had told him. Maybe he didn't think that we knew how to record. I don't know. But he bragged, knowing he was recorded, that they didn't investigate any of 7 police reports of all this going on, told us you're not allowed to call in any more police reports. So when I'm being raped, I'm not allowed to call in a police report because of what Sergeant Lira said. Sergeant Dawson bragged 3 times on camera. We're not going to provide police protection for you because that's not our job. The subtext being, it's not
Yeah.
the job of the police to protect disabled people. I'm not sure, because I looked at the law, and it actually is the job of the police to protect
Yeah.
people who are being attacked and getting death threats. And in the documentation, we couldn't stop it. We went up to the chief of police, Dawn DeServi, and letters were sent to her, emails were sent to her, calls were made to her, and we recorded all of that. Jacqueline
Yeah.
McHammer of Geode Health witnessed over and over again, serves as a witness on video, on the phone, of all these things happening, of messages being left for all the principals of Westward 360, a $15 billion real estate company that is referred to as a slumlord. Because if you look at the Better Business Bureau reports, they do this, they don't rape people all over the country, but they abuse fraud all over the country. Nathan Brown, the records go back to 2022 of real estate crimes in Fox Lake, real estate violations in Fox Lake, including this property and others, illegally renting it as an Airbnb without permissions. He was called before the village council multiple times. Neighboring property owners went and swore under oath, they were sworn in, about how he's dishonest and how he lies. And his excuse was always, oh, I have a bad management company, leaving out the fact that it's his management company that he's a principal owner of. And so resilience, all this happened, but we have it all documented and going up to the mayor, Donnie, he's known. And Fox Lake has been sued so many times for police things like this. And at one point, somebody made an anonymous call that had the police showing up when I was like in pajamas and things. And when that happens, it's a different image than somebody who's prepared. And so this was Officer Wojtowski and his partner, Officer Boyd. And I asked them, I advised them, I said, you're being lied to. Was this anonymous person Nathan Brown? Because he's the only person who had the information that you're saying to me. And he wouldn't tell me. Officer Wojtowski wouldn't tell me. But I said, are you recording this? And he said, yeah. He had a camera right here. I said, I don't want this to turn into an awful situation like you were just sued for. And so I'm going to talk into your camera. I'm going to talk to Chief of Police Donna Survey. And I got into his camera. I said, Chief, hey, I think you're being lied to. We need to talk. Well, that talking never happened, but those videos exist. And I survived. Resilience, 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 resilience to tell the story. And while I was on the street, eating out of garbage cans, there's always reasons to cry. And I'll tell you what, Lisa, I'll tell you what, Stacey, there's always reasons to cry. And I did. I bawl. There's some nights I still bawl because I can't talk to my kids. But if you find that reason to smile, you get through the day. So my reason to smile, I find ones every day. There's always looking forward to seeing my kids. Not only Tino, not only my younger son, his mom prefers I keep his name out of the media. So I'm just going to say he's my dude. He's my music dude. So Valentino and my music dude. But those are my two biological children. And I've had the honor of having children come into my life from the women I've been involved with. And Cody and Michaela and Gianna and Jessica and Tom and I miss them. I miss them all. And I love them. And I'm gonna get weepy. We don't want to do that.
I think your story is amazing. What keeps popping into my head is with all these challenges that occurred, I'm sure the listeners want to know, how did you overcome all these challenges? Because so many people don't even go through a quarter of what you go through. And everybody has a story. Everybody, feels differently, handles things differently. Some can handle stress, some can't. How did you go through all these things in your life and you were able to still move forward and you just didn't give up or stop or just, turn into full anger, blown individual that many people do? How did you not fall into depression, or did you fall into depression and you got yourself out? And then you have people who commit suicide because they just don't feel a purpose to live, because they go, one thing after another happens, and at some point people can't take it anymore. And people just don't know how to gain that resilience. How did you gain the resilience to keep moving forward? Because it seems like you got knocked down so many times, and every time you got knocked back up, you got back up. You got, and you took 3 steps forward, you got knocked back 2 steps. How did you do it?
Well, I understand that some people are going to commit suicide, and that's an individual choice. And I'm not going to judge anybody for anything. Um, Robin Williams, he chose to take his life because he was losing his memory and he didn't want to become a
Mm.
vegetable. And I respect that. I can't even consider that ever. Um, One of the children in my life will have to be taken care of, probably for the rest of his life. I think when they unlock that I am autistic, and what I've struggled with and how I learned to adapt, I think I can be a big influence in helping him. And also with ADHD, when I started ADHD medication, it changed my life.
Mhm.
But those are things for the future. He probably always will at least need assistance or need to be taken care of. And there's only two people who can do that, because my relatives have never sent him a birthday present or a Christmas present. They've never, he doesn't exist to them. Just the same way my mother told me that I'm not autistic because I had a dog, and autistic people can't take care of dogs. And so my therapist pointed out that she probably hasn't heard of Temple Grandin. Um, those who don't know is one of the big figures in the autistic world, a big success story, and she works with animals. But I'm going to use
Yeah.
another prop, and it is
Mhm.
my, here we go, my grandma, and
Aw,
she was my
That's
hero.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's
that
her.
is
And my
beautiful.
grandpa, I never met him. He died before I was ever conceived, even. But my grandmother was born Patricia Smith, and then married James Landers and became Patricia Landers. And my father was molesting me since I was a little kid, and making up these awful things. And my mother, God bless her, everybody's a benefit in my life. Even though my father did awful things, he did teach me certain things. He taught me to play basketball. I love basketball. And my mother, she got me through life,
Mhm.
maybe, but she never used the words "I love you," and she never used the words "I'm proud of you." And those are words that I think everybody needs to hear.
Oh,
And
for
my
sure.
grandma, my
100%.
grandma, my grandma lived on the other side of the country. If she was around me, she might have been able to save me.
Mhm.
But she saved me in the regard that she would call me and tell me those words: "I love you and I'm proud of you." And I try and pass those along. She
Yeah.
was my hero. She is my hero. And I didn't have, great parents. I didn't have babysitters. My babysitter was the TV and movies and comic books. And so I love the concept of heroes. I got into professional wrestling. I've worked with a couple wrestlers. Bret the Hitman Hart was going to be in a series I was producing with Corey
Yeah.
Feldman and Bret. But I fell in love with wrestling because they were real life superheroes. They were big and strong and
Hmm.
macho. I love the word hero. I love it. I actually even have it tattooed on my arm. And it all comes back to my grandma. She wasn't in spandex or big and muscular. She was this beautiful, amazing, talented woman who actually helped develop my love of music, where
Yeah.
I've had success. And she's my hero. And I don't know if anyone's ever going to use the term hero for me, but I try to be, because I try and live in honor of my grandma
Yeah.
and all the other heroes who have touched my life. Um, because as you've seen, I could focus on Dr. Gerald Michael Beasy, sex offender, sex molester, wanted by the law, IRS violations, but he's still
Yeah.
my dad, and I still love
Right.
him. I don't want to be in the same room with him, and he needs to be behind bars, but I still love him. He gave me life. Um, my mother, she won't say the words "I love you." She won't accept autistic children in people in our family.
Yeah.
I still love her. Um, you know, I love everybody. Political parties doesn't matter. And if I can, I just want to touch on that. There's a lot of focus on difference in the
Mhm.
country or in the world.
Yeah.
Hmm.
does it need to be Republican versus Democrat versus Libertarian? Or could we maybe focus on all of us being Americans and
Yes.
working together, teamwork,
Mm,
to make the
yes.
country what it was founded on, to ever grow better?
Yes.
And I'm going to step back because I'm like getting all serious. I like to be fun, have to do. Can I use another? Can I use another prop? Um, my
If you
fractured
had
life. Oh,
oh no,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to. My fractured
Sure.
life was my first book. I've written a couple books, and this was pioneering in the um, alternate history genre, where it's a story about a fictional movie star and first person. And I loaned some of my actual credentials to him just to make it give it some realism. And that's done a lot now. I didn't invent the genre, but I saw the potential. I'd seen a series called or a movie called Fatherland, where the Nazis had won the war. And what an awful concept, but amazing for cinema. And so I did
Yeah.
that as a book, My Fractured Life, and it was optioned for feature film development. And Heath Ledger wanted to do the film. And I mean, again, God rest his soul, it would have been just amazing. But we just got the film and TV rights back. And so maybe now it does get to be made into a film.
Mhm.
And not the one with Heath. That reality is reality. He's gone.
Yeah.
But it can still be something special. And that's resilience in just recognizing you take the opportunities when they're there and you realize when they're not. When
Yes.
something's impossible,
Mhm.
take me, for instance, I can never work a cell phone in my, once it became smartphones, it stopped working for me because my mind, autistic, processes information different. An
Right.
intuitive menu does intuitive predictions for the quote unquote normal mind. Once it went to
Yeah.
smartphones, it became chaos for me. So I will,
Yeah.
it's not a matter of intelligence. It's like being colorblind. I will never be able to do that. And yet
Hmm.
I'm expected to because it's an invisible disability.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
try to use the example. If somebody doesn't have legs, you can't just tell them to grow legs. They would love to. I would love to be able to work a smartphone. A colorblind person would love to be able to see red, blue, and green, you know?
Yes.
Can't wish that into existence. So I wish that Heath Ledger was here to make this movie. He's not.
Hmm.
We could still make a great movie. And
Yes.
that's resilience in media, in entertainment. And then there's resilience in life, living on the street, eating out of garbage cans, knowing I have to survive because people
Yes.
rely. And if I can live and tell the story, then people might be inspired. And that little kid being abused right now sees somebody who survived and didn't
Yeah.
just survive and lives on
Mhm.
welfare, but somebody who survived. And Steve Jobs called a marketing genius.
I love
And so
that.
I'm not going to say
We
I'm a
were
genius, you know, but if that inspires somebody, I'm going to wear the badge.
right. And
100%.
before we started this conversation, we were talking about how the most difficult times in all of our lives kind of open the doors for the brightest, most powerful, impactful times. And your story highlights that in so many levels. And I think for the people who are listening, just reiterating that, like, get back up, you can do it. You can use, excuse me, your challenges to influence the rest of your life in a positive way.
Yeah.
Um, Such an
And
amazing thing.
and Lisa and Stacey, I mean, you both have these amazing stories of resilience, of conquering challenges, and your incredible successes. You're incredible people. I mean, just feeling your energy and your smiles and all that. I mean, it's amazing to just be around you. But you have these incredible stories too, and everybody does. Everybody
Yeah.
has greatness in
Hmm.
them.
Yes.
And
100%.
Jacqueline McCammon, the therapist that I no longer have because my relatives uh, got on the phone and they told her, she's explaining what my diagnosis is, all these things. And they told her that they know more than her. this person I was working with 3 times a week, processing what daddy did. And these relatives who hadn't seen me in years told the English majors told the medical professional they knew more than her. And so I don't have her right now because of that relationship was severed due to these relatives. And before that happened, she said, you have the relatives, the Landers, who say what you can't do. And then you have the people in the media, your celebrity clients, the people who buy the products that you name. I could go through your homes and point out products that I named or convinced you to buy by writing the ad material.
Right.
These people call you great. These people call you a success. And this other faction, you have these 2 factions. This faction calls you stupid, effing stupid. And this faction calls you a hero. Who do you want to listen to?
Oh,
this one,
the
one who calls me hero. So that's what I want to instill in every child, in every teenager, in every adult who hasn't achieved what they want. Anyone who's told, no, you can't. I'm telling you, you can't. I haven't met you maybe, but I know you can. Think of the movie Rain Man. Dustin Hoffman's playing severely autistic Charlie. Everyone's saying all these awful things, how stupid he is and whatnot. There's a scene in a restaurant and a box of toothpicks is dropped. And Charlie knows exactly how many there are. It's like, I should look up the figure. But it's a very exact number. So in that moment, he's the smartest person in that restaurant. Actually, he's probably the smartest person in the world, because who else could do that?
Right.
That autistic individual in our family that I referred to, he builds puzzles 3-dimensionally. I don't know how he does. It's incredible. Everybody is brilliant. Every single person. Going back to being raped in Fox Lake by Nathan Brown in Westward 360 and Airbnb, who the Schaumburg police who rescued me got on the phone with Airbnb and asked them to address this. And they never called back. Emails were sent, lots of communications to the legal department, the marketing, the branding department, and the celebrity relationship department, different departments. And Airbnb never responded because they have a $50 million a year budget per Bloomberg News, $50 million a year to cover up things like just a one-time rape, much less holding a whole staff captive and destroying their bodies. And it's just, Lisa, Stacey, you got to steer me back on.
If you had to take today's conversation and you wanted to really emphasize on important factors that we touched base on today when it comes to resilience, what are some things you really want the listeners to walk away with from our conversation today that we had?
To love each other. And I don't mean that like, hippie peace kind of thing. I wear a suit but it is about love, and it's about supporting each other. It's about helping each other, because that's how we make society better. That's how you make a community better. That's how you make a business better. That's how you make a family better. And that's how you make a country better. And that's how you make a world better, by celebrating differences, because we're all different. I mean, look at I have helped and supported candidates in all political parties, independent parties, Republican parties, Democratic parties. And I always just make the decision based on the individual and what they can do. And currently in the office in the US, we have President Donald Trump. And the interesting thing is, if you look at doctor reports and scientist reports, he actually fits the definition of somebody with autism. And so you have Robert Kennedy Jr. wanting to track and categorize and track and make you register as an autistic person. And I'm trying to figure out, if that means that we have to register the president as autistic. And does
Yeah.
that change? Does that change if it affects a certain class? And
Why would
I,
we, why would
right,
we have to register people? What
Mhm.
then in that case we should be registered in every condition. Why are we stigmatizing people with autism? It makes no
right.
Mhm.
sense to me.
Well,
They're no different than everybody else.
maybe it's because I'm bald. Maybe we need to register bald people, or white people, or Christian people. Or I
Yeah.
mean, I fit all these, right? I'm Caucasian. I'm bald. I'm Christian. Why is the autism that has to be
Mhm.
registered? And if there's a valid reason, let's go ahead and talk about it.
I feel what
Because
people fear is what people fear is what they go after. So when people don't understand something, they fear it. And when they fear it, they focus on it and they make things
Mhm.
difficult that
yeah,
that area because and it's only because they just don't get it. They don't understand it. So immediately the fear takes over and then their behaviors change, their actions change, and people do things that they normally wouldn't do out of fear.
Mhm.
and that's where bullying comes from. And I have a
Yes.
wonderful, dear business associate and friend, Chase Masterson, and people will recognize her beauty and her name and her talent as Lita on Star Trek: The Next Generation. And but
Yeah.
she should have been on. She should still be on Broadway. She's an amazing vocalist, amazing actress, but she's also an amazing business person. And like myself, gives back to others, gives back to the community. And she has an organization called Pop Culture Hero Coalition.
Mhm.
And it is all about combating bullying. And
Yeah.
a lot of times that those bullies, they're doing it because of an insecurity in them.
100%.
Mhm.
And
That's what
That's where
so
it comes from.
you know.
maybe instead of pointing out, oh, you're a bully, let's work on the solution of,
Mhm.
okay, that's the symptom. You're a bully. What's the condition? What is the cause? If we figure out what that insecurity is in them, that deficiency that makes them hostile and call names, then we can
Yeah.
fix that. And then
Mhm.
everybody's happy and they're not a bully. And then they can be our friend.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Wow, that's cool. Then everybody's friends and happy and groovy and cool. And then it's all smile.
I love it. I
Me
love it.
too. We really, really want to thank you for, showing up today and speaking with us and sharing all of this and being so brave to come forward and talk about it. So Stacey and I really commend you for that. It's amazing. So thank you. And our audience thanks you as well. So we appreciate you being here today.
And
Yes.
Lisa and Stacey, thank you so much. One thing that we didn't touch on is the condition that is caused when your father is raped, when your hero is doing those bad things. I have something I live with, and it's called dissociative identity disorder. What was once called multiple personality disorder. It's never going to go away. I live with that. And it's weird. It's weird, but it's real. And yet I achieved all this success because of it, because of using the personalities, their different talents. And
Yes.
it affects relationships too. I might and not ever have a great romantic relationship because it's hard to live with somebody who turns into other people. But
Yeah.
maybe, and I don't want to invite myself if it's
Mhm.
unwanted. But I think that would be an interesting topic that
I
maybe
would
we
love
could talk
to
about
have you on
in
the
depth.
show and talk about
Yeah.
that. We actually do have a very large audience that has suffered from sexual abuse. We have people that have been put in cults,
Mm.
and their parents went into cults, and then they had to be raised into cults. And we have people that have witnessed, different things, that they shouldn't have witnessed. And people have come on the show and have shared their stories. And the amount of people that responded were outstanding because people don't realize there is so much sexual abuse that goes on in our society that people do not talk about, that people put underneath the rug, people keep
Mhm.
quiet about. And people like yourself need to come out and share these stories and then share how you overcame them and how you were able to move on. Because people, most dysfunctionalism and most problems occur from when we were children, from our
Mhm.
childhood. That's where
Hmm.
the root really begins, unless something traumatic happens along the way. And a lot of those feelings, and those emotions that were caused during this time, that trauma is repressed in people's subconscious in the back of their brain. And because it's stored there, a lot of times things will trigger people, a phrase, a word, an action, a color, and people can't cope because they've been traumatized by an event in their life, or they've been raised in a family that has said things or done things over and over, and it has caused psychological mental health issues, and it's still not released. And it's learning how to talk about it, relate to it, get advice from other individuals, and really bring those emotions to level where they're able to actually, work through those emotions. Because once we get them out of that stored subconscious and we're able to actually deal with them and start the healing process, and that's not easy, life could change dramatically and people can
Hmm.
move on. And a success story like yours can be possible for many who struggle with even getting up in the morning because things like this have happened to them in the past.
And Stacey, I mean, I love you. You're just amazing. And like you said, you've had these other guests on who have survived
Hmm.
sexual abuse. The audience, so many audience members who have survived sexual abuse. I want to focus on the word survived, and that
Mhm.
every person who survives is a hero.
Yes.
Everybody, if you lived through it and you're still here, you're a hero. And that brings us back to the theme of today's show, resilience. Yes,
Yes.
I have resilience, and I am not the only one. Everybody has resilience in you.
Hmm.
Stacey, you do. Lisa, you do. Every audience member does. And I
Hmm.
just find it, cherish it, and use it however you have to.
Yeah.
Because you can do it, you can survive, and you can be great.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Well, we look
100%.
forward to having you back. Sounds like you're going to be back. So the audience is excited. We're excited.
I'm
And
excited.
yeah, totally.
And
But we really
I
want to thank you.
obviously thank
And
you.
from the
Thank you both. Thank you
yes,
to the
out of my heart. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on it. And I
Yeah.
look forward to our next conversation together. This is going to be amazing.
All right. Bye, everyone.